I tried to beat Pokemon Black using only Rock-type Pokemon as a hardcore Nuzlocke. Rock types are known for being physically bulky, but have several weaknesses to ground, water, and grass types, all of which are super common in Unova. In a Nuzlocke, if a Pokemon faints, it's dead forever, and I can only catch the first Rock-type Pokemon per new area. The other rules for the challenge are on the screen. With this run never being fully completed on YouTube, it's gonna be a rock-hard battle. Let's get started. Like every Pokemon, I have to pick up a starter. For this challenge, I picked Tepig, so my rivals Cheren and Bianca will pick Servine and Oshawott. Both of these Pokemon are water and grass types respectively. This is to give me the hardest challenge possible and make me think outside of the box. Plus, I know you guys like watching me suffer for some reason. Now you might be wondering, the first eligible encounter isn't obtainable until after the first gym badge, so how are you going to get an encounter? Luckily for this challenge, we can get an encounter or encounters before the first gym badge thanks to the Dream World. Now the Dream World has been shut down for some time, but using the power of magic, we can play the mini games required to unlock these Pokemon. Before the start of the game, however, the only Pokemon we can get are Larvitar, Sudowoodo, and Aron. These are all really great Pokemon and come with great moves like Dark Pulse and Rollout, so I'm not too worried about the early game. One detail I noticed is that N is in the crowd while Getsus gives his propaganda speech. This is a really cool detail, and I'm surprised it took me this long to notice. N does battle me here, but I beat him pretty easily as all he has is a Purloin, so it's not a huge issue. Still, he will become a massive hurdle later on in the game, essentially becoming my third rival. While I don't have to worry about N quite yet, I do have to worry about Cheren, one of the first roadblocks. He leads off with a scary Oshawott and I with Aron, who I didn't nickname. All Cheren does is go for a tail whip, lowering my defense before Aron lets off a massive head smash for the instant KO. Yeah, Dream World movesets are sort of broken in the early game. The Growl, who destroys the Purloin with a few rollouts, winning me the first battle. This guy is going to get a lot harder later down the line if you couldn't tell. This brings me to the first fight against the first gym leader, Cress. Since I picked Tepig, he is the monkey that is strongest to me, being Panpour. With super effective water guns, this is going to be an issue. Fortunately, he leads off with Lillipup and I with a Growl. Lillipup goes for a workup, boosting its attack stats. A rollout, however, hits for a decent amount of damage, and even with the workup, a bite only does a bit of damage. It also activates my rattled ability, which boosts my speed. However, I flinch, which resets the power of rollout. Fortunately, I don't have any further issues, and Growl picks up the KO with a few rollouts. Second and last is the water gunning Panpour, who lives a rollout and goes for a greedy workup. Thanks to the speed boost, we don't underspeed and can get the KO, winning me the battle and the first gym badge. Hey, it didn't even take 14 attempts this time. Unfortunately, immediately after winning the badge, Cheren jumps me and wants another fight. There are like a million rival fights in the game, and each fight is always going to have a Pokemon that hits like a truck. In this case, Cheren still has his Oshawott, which luckily hasn't evolved. Cheren also hasn't gotten any smarter because he just goes for a Water Spout before a rollout from Growl does decent damage. Cheren then gets his act together and goes for a Water Gun before being KO'd by a rollout. Second is Purloin, and even with a Growl, a rollout still KOs, winning me the battle. I promise I won't use rollout a lot as it is unreliable with only 85% accuracy. It's just really fun, and Sudowoodo isn't really that great of a Pokemon. In Wellspring Cave, I have an encounter with Team Plasma, but I have a much more important encounter in this cave. The encounter is a Rock'n'Rolla, which is a pretty good encounter. The Rock'n'Rolla line is one of my favorites in all of Unova. I've only ever used a Rock'n'Rolla one time for my first ever playthrough of Black, but it's always nice to use one of these, plus it has a great shiny. Shortly after, I arrive in Nacrene City and I have two big battles here. The first and the obvious one is the normal type gym leader Lenora, who isn't the biggest threat in the world as Rock resists normal types and we can dish good damage. The real fight is N, who uses Pokemon from around him. In this case, he is a Temple and a Timber who can hit all of my Pokemon for super effective damage. I also don't have access to great TMs or more encounters because it's still early in the game, so I have to dive headfirst in the battle. This is also going to require a decent amount of luck. Fortunately, N's first Pokemon is a Pidove, and with our newly caught Elvis, we can 1v1. Against it, however, I take up the opportunity to set up iron defenses and batter tank Timber's attack. Pidove does crit, but it can't withstand a set of rock blasts. The fight becomes real when Temple takes the field. Fortunately, the AI in Black and White love going for stat-changing moves, and Temple goes for a Growl, which is annoying, but Rock Blast does crit, which negates the Growl. That was a pretty lucky crit. Unfortunately, we're still at a significant disadvantage as Timber takes the field. Timber immediately goes for a scary Focus Energy, which allows me to go for a Headbutt. Timber goes for a low kick, but thanks to the defense boosts, it doesn't do that much and I go for a headbutt. This means that all I have to do is take another low kick, which luckily doesn't crit before a headbutt takes the KO, winning me the battle. It is now time for the much less scary fight against Lenora, which is pretty anticlimactic. Her Watchog can be annoying however with hypnosis, but like I said, I'm not that worried. Lenora leads off with Herdier and I with Elvis, who gets intimidated. After taking a bite, I go for an iron defense even though I don't really need it. Eventually I take another bite and I go for Rock Blast, which is weakened by Intimidate. Realizing I can't really do much, I switch into Growl on a potion. Herdier leers me before I go for a rollout. Even with the leer, moves like Takedown aren't doing that much damage thanks to the typing. After some more attacks and Herdier's recoil, I do pick up the KO, which is expected, although he gave me more trouble than I thought. Last is Watchog. Watchog knows hypnosis, and if it lands, it's not a huge deal. Fortunately, Watchog misses his hypnosis, meaning Growl can go for a rollout, which crits to end the fight. That wins me the second gym badge without any major issues. Unfortunately, after winning the badge, Team Plasma steals the skull of a Dragonite in the region where you can't get a Dragonite. For some reason, I'm tasked with finding the fossil. Outside the museum, I meet Berg, who is the third gym leader. I love how gym leaders in this game feel like real people with duties. Could you ever imagine Brock leaving his gym to help you? Yeah, me neither. Another detail I love about these games are the falling trees. I really miss niche details like these. Pokemon Sword and Shield could never. Look, here's another one to show how committed Game Freak is. Eventually I find the skull and I'm set on my way. This results with me going on the Sky Bridge to Castelia City. The Sky Bridge is my favorite game in all of Pokemon because I was mind blown when I saw the DS was capable of displaying these graphics. In a way, it still is mind blowing all these years later. After I arrive in the city, I realize I have a fight against the aforementioned gym leader, Berg. He uses bug types, and you may think rock beats bug, so it's a pretty easy battle. I wish. Unfortunately, his ace Leavanny has Rage Leaf, which is awful for my Pokemon except for Aaron, but Aaron can't really hit back. Luckily, I do have a play here, but first I have to get through Berg's Sticky Honey. Could you imagine going through this gym? This must be really gross. Either way, I do make it to Berg with guns blazing. Berg leads off with Whirlipede and I with Elvis. Whirlipede does outspeed, going for a Screech, lower my defense before 2 Rock Blasts, one of which crit, pick up the KO, bringing in the terrifying Leavanny. Since we are at full HP, I can stay in thanks to my Sturdy ability. A Razor Leaf comes out doing massive damage, but luckily thanks to Sturdy we survive and can fire back with 2 Rock Blasts for the KO. That was pretty scary. Last is Crustle, who we can't 1v1. Instead I have to switch to Growl on a feint attack. I then get Sand Attack, lowering my accuracy before I Rock Throw hits for massive damage. From here, all I have to do is tank 2 Smackdowns due to a miss thanks to Sand Attack before Rock Throw picks up the KO, winning me the battle and the 3rd gym badge. These crits were super lucky, but if we didn't get them, I would have pivoted to Aaron, who would have head smashed to get the KO and win me the badge the same way. Those crits were pretty lucky, but if we didn't get them, I would have switched to Aaron, who would have KO'd with some head smashes, and the end result would have been the same, with me winning the 3rd gym badge. In order to get my next 2 encounters, I have 2 fights with Bianca and Charon. It's really hard to come up with a completely foolproof strategy, so my goal is just to wing it with Growl. I am aware I am risking Growl here, but come on, it's not like he's going to be that useful, right? One problem I notice is that Bianca is going to be a huge issue later on. This is because she gets an Elemental Monkey which can hit for stab super effective damage, and she has a Grass Starter. Fortunately, we do fight her less than Charon, which is good. I will eventually have a strategy that replaces Rollout, but I'm gonna have to wait a decent amount for that. For now, it's just Rollout City. With Bianca and Charon out of the way, I can make a beeline for the Desert Resort and pick up a Dwebble whose bug type gives me a counter to grass types. However, he is pretty weak now, so he's not the most useful Pokemon ever. Inside the actual Desert Resort, I talk to a random girl who gives me the choice between the Plume and the Cover Fossil. The Plume Fossil gives me Archeops, and the Cover Fossil gives me Tortuga. I pick up the Cover Fossil because Tortuga's water type gives me a better chance against other water types, plus he gets access to setup moves like Shell Smash and Curse. London also has Solid Rock, which reduces super effective hits instead of Sturdy, which is great. On the way to Nimbasa City, Elvis evolves into a Boulder, raising his attack and defenses. Boulder is also one of the best middle evolutions in my opinion. I actually forget to evolve him into a Gigalith, so it's good we're using such a well-designed Pokemon. After making it to Nimbasa City, I meet N, and at this point in the game, he's just so funny. He takes me, a random 10-year-old, and confesses he is the leader of a terrorist organization that robs people. I do have to fight N again, and he is scarier than ever. He is a Sandile and Scraggy hit for super effective damage, as well as Darumaka and Sigilyph. Sandile isn't too big of a threat, especially with Lennon, but Scraggy can hit hard with Brick Break. Luckily he does tend to use Swagger a lot, so I see an opportunity here. N leads off with Sandile, who barely lives an Aqua Jet from Lennon but goes for an Embargo, which is completely fine. From here, another Aqua Jet picks up the KO, bringing in the main threat of the fight, Scraggy. Just like I predicted, he goes for a Swagger, raising my attack and confusing me. Aqua Jet will now do massive damage, but unfortunately I hurt myself in confusion. Fortunately, on the following turn I don't hurt myself in confusion and Aqua Jet does massive damage. Brick Break hits, but it does a lot less damage than I expected. Either way, I do risk the entire run on Lennon not getting confused and Scraggy not landing a critical hit. Here goes nothing. I click Aqua Jet and Lennon doesn't get confused and KOs with an Aqua Jet. Phew. Third out is Sigilyph, and Lennon can't deal with all the special attacks this thing is gonna dish out. I decide to switch to Elvis, who gets whirlwinded, bringing Elvis back out. I then switch back into Elvis, who tanks a massive Side Beam. I risk a Side Beam crit, which doesn't happen before Rock Blast gets the KO, leaving Darumaka, who's a Fire type. Since Elvis is pretty weak, I switch into Growl, who avoids the Fire Punch. This means all Growl has to do is tank a Fire Punch for 12 HP and destroy Darumaka with a Rock Blast, winning me the battle. After doing some things I'm not proud of, I come face to face with the next gym leader, Elesa, who uses electric types. Since we're not ground types, we are neutral towards each other, is what I would say if Game Freak didn't give her 2 flying types. This means I'm not too worried. She leads off with Emolgia and I with Elvis. Emolgia goes for a Volt Switch on turn 1, which brings out her other Emolgia. Emolgia number 2 takes a Rock Blast to the face, which immediately gets the KO, bringing in Emolgia number 1. Since I don't want to be crit, I switch into Larvitar and a Volt Switch, who hasn't seen much screen time. Larvitar walls Emolgia pretty well and can only hit me with Aerial Ace, so I take the opportunity to set up Stealth Rocks for the Zepstrika. After tanking Aerial Ace, Rock Slide is just shy of the KO, which does get Elesa to waste a potion on the following turn. Instead of going for Rock Slide, I go for a Dark Pulse to make sure the next Rock Slide will KO. After tanking a third Aerial Ace, Rock Slide misses. How anticlimactic. Luckily, after tanking a 4th Aerial Ace, Rock Slide connects, taking out Emolgia, bringing out her ace Zepstrika. I risk a burn and a crit when Zepstrika goes for Flame Charge, which is really stupid looking back. Fortunately, Rock Slide does connect and does a ton of damage in the process. Since I can't stay in, I switch to Growl on a weak Quick Attack. After tanking a Volt Switch for decent damage, I go underground for a dig, and on the following turn re-emerge for the KO and the 4th Gym Badge. Risking the crit and the burn was super risky and stupid. Not my proudest moment in a Nuzlocke. After winning the badge, I use special powers to rename Aaron to Axel and Larvitar to Cash. Both are great names in my opinion. Using the Dream World, I also unlock the Windswept Sky route and get an Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl's typing is great because I now have a Pokemon that's immune to ground moves and neutral to grass moves. This is gonna be fun. On the way to Driftveil City, I have a rival fight with Sharon. I'm sure you can guess the strategy I employ here. He leads off with Liepard and I with Roll. I let Rollout gradually build up until it has enough power to one-shot Liepard. Duat comes out and I pray Rollout hits and KOs. I actually don't outspeed and I live a non-critical hit Water Pulse and then KO Duat on the following turn. From there, Charon's Pokemon are easy fodder, winning me the battle, but man, I am truly testing luck. After arriving in Driftveil City and witnessing Team Plasma do some questionable stuff, I watched Larvitar evolve into a Pupitar. Unfortunately, it's here I make the realization we can't evolve into Tyranitar because of the level cap. It's not like Pupitar is going to be useful into Clay, the ground-type gym leader, and for the first time we have an actual issue. While I have Aerodactyl to negate ground-type moves, he can't hit back. The rest of my Pokemon, except for Lennon, would get destroyed by Excadrill's ground-type moves. If you've watched my Pokemon Black with only water types, then you know I soloed Clay with just a Tortuga. However, that required 2 misses from Swagger and another miss from Muddy Water, and then a lucky critical hit, which is insane, and I'm definitely not pulling that off again. Fortunately, I do plan to take advantage of Crocodile and then abuse the Gen 5 AI. If you didn't know, if you set up a Swords Dance, the AI will try to compensate by setting up Workup. You can trick the AI by setting up and attacking on the following turn. Let's test this out. Clay leads off with Crocodile and I with Lennon. Crocodile goes for a Swagger, which connects this time before we hurt ourselves in confusion, which is a great start. Fortunately, we don't get confused, and thanks to the attack boost, Aqua Jet KOs, bringing in Palpitoad, who doesn't take super effective damage from water moves. This isn't a huge issue as long as confusion doesn't hurt multiple times. Luckily, we break through and land a critical hit for the instant one-shot, so that wasn't a huge issue. Last from Clay is Excadrill, and remember what I said at the beginning? Since we have the attack boost, Excadrill will go for a Hone Claws to boost its attack. An Aqua Jet does massive damage, and Excadrill goes for a Hone Claws like I predicted. If we had gotten confused or Excadrill attacked, it wouldn't have been the end of the world, but things would have gotten a lot more dicey. I would have switched to Aerodactyl to do some chip, and then Larvitar who would have gotten the KO with Dig in case anybody was wondering. Either way, we don't get confused and pick up the KO on the following turn, winning me the battle and the 5th gym badge. I guess Lennon and Nessie were similar after all. Up ahead is another rival fight with Bianca. Her team has gotten scarier, so I decide to change the formula a little bit by leading off with Axel to sponge Herdiers Intimidate. I then switch to Growl and go for Rollout while simultaneously praying it doesn't miss. For those who are sick of this strategy, I am proud to report it's the last time I use it in a rival fight because of Rollout's low accuracy. I use it once later by accident, but we'll get to that. For now, however, I'm gonna have to figure out something new. On the way to Nacrene City, Axel finally evolves into a Lairon whose added attack makes him more useful than an Intimidate Eater. Welcome back to the team, bud. Outside of Driftveil Cave, I meet Clay who breaks these spiderwebs. I really love how gym leaders feel like real people and not complete NPCs. Could you imagine any of the gym leaders in Kanto, Johto, Hoenn, or Sinnoh doing anything? Clay and the other Unova gym leaders are my favorite in this series' history in my opinion. For today's comment question, tell me your favorite gym leader down in the comments below. While you're down there, you might as well subscribe. It's free and it really helps me out. Leads off with Boulder and I with Axel, who is damaged from fighting all the wild Pokemon. I forgot to heal him, which is why he barely lives a Mud Slap after hitting a massive Iron Head. Thanks to the accuracy drop, I switch into the boss on a Mud Slap, which obviously fails thanks to our flying type. I can then switch to Lennon, who takes a Smackdown better than Mud Slap. I then KO Boulder on the following turn with a priority Aqua Jet, bringing in Joltik with Electro Web. This is a no-go, so it's off to Lennon, but Joltik just goes for a Gastro Acid. After tanking a weak Bug Bite, Cash goes underground for a Dig. On the next turn, Dig connects, leaving Joltik in the yellow HP range. Fortunately, Joltik can't hit very hard and just goes for Bug Bite as I switch Cash out into Cobain because Cash's ground type makes him more useful into the steel types. On the following turn, Smackdown destroys Joltik, making Cobain the victor in the bug battle. Third out is Ferroseed. I stay in and I hit a Bug Bite before Metal Claw and Iron Barbs do massive damage. I can't stay in, so it's off to the boss as Ferroseed just goes for an Iron Defense. I then go for an Ancient Power in hopes of getting the Omni Boost, which doesn't happen before I eat a Metal Claw. Assurance then does a bit of damage before Metal Claw leaves me deep in the yellow and Ferroseed gets the attack boost. This is really bad, so I switch into Elvis, who takes a third from Metal Claw. I then go for an Iron Defense, boosting my defense and allowing me to tank Metal Claws better. I then set up a second Iron Defense on the following turn, and Ferroseed misses a Metal Claw, which is great and essentially gave me a free defense boost. This means I can set up a third Iron Defense before Ferroseed copies me and gets to +4 with its own Iron Defenses. We then start trading Rock Blasts and Metal Claws. I do get a crit on the first one, but Elvis refuses to hit more than 2 Rock Blasts at a time. After 2 minutes, Elvis emerges victorious thanks to the boosts. This leaves N's final Pokemon, Clink. Luckily, I have the perfect solution in Cash, who comes out on a failed Charge Beam. I then go underground for a Dig, and on the following turn, I destroy Clink, winning me the battle against N. Man, that took forever. His Pokemon aren't scary, just more so annoying. This fight was also a pain to script and took about 70% of the 6th page. That was probably the longest I've ever spent on a Team Evil fight other than Getsus or the final end fight. Moving on, I finally make it to Nacrene City and meet Skyla and a random guy. I never see this guy again, so I'm really not sure why he's needed. Either way, he does upgrade my Pokedex, which is kind even though we don't really know each other. While fighting some gym trainers, Cobain evolves into Crustle, arguably the best Pokemon for the run, as you'll see later. Seriously, do not sleep on this thing, plus it has a pretty underrated design. In the Pokemon Center, I discover that weather TMs can be purchased, so I pick up the Sandstorm TM, which boosts our special defense. This is a phenomenal move. This brings me to the fight against Skyla for the 6th gym badge. She uses flying types, and with a team full of rock types, I don't think this fight is going to be much of an issue. She does have a water type Swanna, which can be scary, but I could set Sandstorm, meaning Bubble Beam won't do as much damage. Skyla leads off with Swoobat, and I with Elvis, who is holding the Eviolite, raising its defenses. Swoobat goes on the offense by setting up an Amnesia before I set up the Sand with Sandstorm, raising my special defense by a whopping 30%. After taking a weak Heart Stamp, a Power Gem connects and does way less damage than I thought. Side note, Power Gem is special and not physical. Oops. After taking a second Heart Stamp, I go for a physical Rock Blast, which destroys Swoobat and brings in the main threat of the fight, Swanna. Swanna goes for an Aqua Ring on the first turn before Rock Blast connects, and it does massive damage. I then take a Bubble Beam, which hurts a lot considering that we're holding the Eviolite and the sand is up. Doesn't matter because Rock Blast hits and gets the KO, bringing in Skyla's final Pokemon in Unfezant. Elvis could probably KO Unfezant, but I really don't want to risk it. I decide to switch into Axel on a Quick Attack, which really doesn't do that much damage. Unfezant then goes for a Leer, as Iron Head does a little less than half on the following turn. Since Unfezant can't touch us, a few more Iron Heads get the KO and win me the 6th gym badge pretty easily. Still, I was surprised as to how much Bubble Beam did, a crit and it would have been over. Outside of the hangar, I meet N, who lectures me and thankfully does not want to fight me. Thanks to the increase in the level cap, I can evolve Lennon into a Carracosta, one of my favorite Gen 5 Pokemon. Carracosta also gets access to broken setup moves like Curse and Shell Smash, making him a truly formidable opponent. Up ahead on Twist Mountain, I have another rival fight with Cheren. It has gotten pretty scary as he's evolved his Duat into Samurott. This is also going to be the first rival fight where Grawl isn't going to make an appearance. Instead, I intend to implement the strategy I used in Skyla's gym. Eviolite and Sandstorm Elvis, who's able to sponge hits with no issue. Cheren leads off with the normal flying type Unfezant and I with Elvis. It's raining, which would be very bad for Samurott to come into. I set up the sand completely for free as Unfezant goes for a failed detect. After taking a weak Air Slash, a few Rock Blasts pick up the KO, bringing in the scary Duat. Duat thankfully isn't fully evolved, so he's destroyed by a few Rock Blasts, one of which crit. Throw it out as Liepard, and I have the perfect counter. I switch to Cobain to eat the Fake Out for a whopping 4 HP. Liepard goes for a Torment before Bug Bite leaves Liepard with what must be 1 HP. But hey, I do eat its Citrus Berry. On the following turn, I take an Assurance before Smackdown picks up the KO. Last is the Fire-type Simisear, who we can't 1v1. I decide to switch into Lennon on what should be a fire move, but the monkey just goes for a Leer. This means a few Aqua Jets pick up the KO, winning me the battle, and I didn't even need Grawl. Up ahead, I meet Clay and Cheren in Twist Mountain. Navigating Twist Mountain was always a pain for me in the original games, and I spent more time than I care to admit trying to get out. One thing I didn't know until researching for this challenge is that the TM Substitute, which is found here. If you didn't know what Substitute does, it takes some HP and helps you avoid non-damaging moves. The next gym fight is against Bryson, who uses Ice types. Rock types do massive damage to Ice types, so I'm not really worried about the fight. Bryson leads off with Vanillish and I with Elvis. Vanillish goes for an Acid Armor, raising its defense stat before I set up the Sand with Sandstorm. Elvis then luckily avoids a Mirror Shot before a set of Rock Blasts do massive damage and KO the very creative Generation 5 design. Bryson's second Pokemon is Beartick, who outspeeds and goes for a Swagger, confusing me. Luckily we break through, and thanks to the attack boosts, Rock Blasts do massive damage and also get the KO. Side note, Beartick is one of the most underrated Generation 5 designs. It's such a cool design. On the contrary, Bryson's final Pokemon Cryogonal isn't so cool. Somehow it outspeeds and lands a weak Aurora Beam before Rock Blast destroy it, winning me the battle and a pretty easy 7th gym badge. If we had gotten confused, I'm sure the rest of the team would have been able to handle Bryson. After the fight, a bunch of Team Plasma people ambushed me, meaning we have to climb up Dragon Spire Tower to confront them. And let's just say Team Plasma is into some questionable things. Unfortunately, that doesn't stop N from awakening Zekrom, who's going to be an issue later down the line. First, N has the most anti-rock team ever, and now he's added a legendary to his arsenal. Great. This then takes me back to the Desert Resort, where I meet Cheren. I thought he was going to fight me to see if I can prove my worthiness or something, but thankfully he doesn't. Inside the Desert Resort, Cheren and I confront Ghetsis, who tells us about his master plan. I have no clue why Alder just doesn't arrest Ghetsis, but oh well. On the way to Ruleset City, I have another rival fight with Bianca. Her team is insane with a Water Monkey and a Grass Survivor. Fortunately, it's the last fight with her in the entire game, and the level cap allows Cobain to learn Shell Smash, which is a busted move raising attack and speed. However, it does come with the cost of lowering defense. I also have the TM for Substitute, which gives me a lot more wiggle room. Bianca leads off with Stoutland, who is a heavy hitter and comes with Intimidate, so we are already at a disadvantage. Luckily, Stoutland just goes for a workup raising attack on turn 1, allowing me to get a free Substitute. Stoutland then proceeds to go for another workup as I take the opportunity to set up a Shell Smash. Thanks to the speed boost, I can set up a second Smash before taking a Crunch. Thanks to the defense drops, this obviously breaks my Substitute. Fortunately, it doesn't matter because on the following turn, X-Scissor gets the KO. Second out is the Water-type Simipour, but he doesn't stand a chance and is destroyed by a +3 X-Scissor. Third is Survivor, who obviously stands no chance against a boosted super effective Stab X-Scissor. Unfortunately, by KOing Superior, Cobain goes over the level cap, and thanks to Hardcore Nuzlocke rules, he can no longer be used. This means I have to switch out immediately against Bianca's last Pokemon being Musharna. Fortunately, Lennon comes out for free on a Lucky Chant. And after a few turns and some healing shenanigans, Surf gets the KO, winning me the battle and the final Bianca fight. On to Blind City, I have a confrontation with Getsus and his ninja. How is this guy out loud in the open, and why isn't anybody doing anything about it? This is ridiculous. Getsus should be in jail. Again, Getsus is giving a speech in Overleveling City out in the open. Alder, do your job as champion and arrest him, you incompetent little... Shifting gears, Axel evolves into Aggron right before the fight against Drayden and his dragon types. Aggron is one of my favorite Generation 3 Pokemon that I've never really used before. Honestly, Aggron should have been a pseudo-legendary Pokemon. Just like I stated, the 8th and final gym leader is Drayden and his dragon types. Since I can't use Cobain, the plan is just to set up curses with Lennon and go to town. I intend to abuse the AI as well for this fight, so that should be fun. Drayden leads off with Fracture, and I with Lennon. Fracture immediately sets up a Dragon Dance, raising attack and speed, as I set up a curse lowering my speed but raising my attack and defense. Fracture goes for a second Dragon Dance, which is what I predicted, as Lennon goes for a curse boosting his stats. Fracture goes for a third Dragon Dance, which is a mistake as Crunch hits, doing massive damage. Since I know Drayden is going to heal up his Fracture, I go for a third curse. For some reason, I outspeed on the following turn and KO with a Crunch, although I definitely should have been slower than Fracture. Second out is Druddigan, who we also outspeed and hit a Crunch, doing massive damage, and I get the defense drop as well. Unfortunately, I forgot about Dragon Tail, which hits and sends Lennon back to my party and drags out Grawl. Grawl is back on the team, as Cobain isn't there at the moment. This is a huge mistake on my part, because if I swap back to Lennon, all of his boosts will be gone. Unless... Look, I know I said I wasn't going to use Rollout, but let Grawl have one last hurrah. After taking Night Slash, raising my speed thanks to Rattled, Rollout does a bit of damage. I also take Rough Skin chip damage, which isn't good either. Drayden heals up, and Rollout does a bit more damage, although at this point Rough Skin chip is starting to add up. Fortunately, on the next turn, Rollout KOs Druddigan, and I'm left with 46 HP as Haxorus comes out. I pray for Rollout not to miss, which it doesn't, and Haxorus is one-shot by Sudowoodo. I never thought I'd see a Sudowoodo take out a Haxorus of all things. That is an insane way to win the 8th and final gym badge, and we've done so deathless. Since we've won 8 gym badges, the final route in the Dream World has unlocked, being the Sparkling Sea. In my PC, I find the Rock-type Pokemon Lileep. When evolved into Cradily, I finally have access to a Grass type. Plus, he also comes with Giga Drain, which is a phenomenal move. He also has Storm Train, which seems awesome because it gives me a water immunity, but once Lileep evolves at level 40, it turns into the much worse ability Suction Cups. Still, Cradily is one of my favorite fossil Pokemon ever other than Tortuga. On the path to Victory Road, I have a final rival fight with Cheren. His team isn't that bad, so I'm not too worried. Cheren leads off with the predictable lead Unfezant, and I with Lennon. I did not mean to lead with Lennon, so I switch him out for Elvis on a Detect, which fails. Unfezant then gets off a double Detect, meaning I waste a turn of Rock Blast. Luckily, on the following turn, Unfezant just goes for a Taunt before being destroyed by a set of Rock Blasts. This means Cheren is going to send out his Water-type starter, Samurott. Elvis has no business staying in against this monster, so I switch into Cradily on an Aqua Tail, which we avoid. Samurott outspeeds, but it just goes for an Encore, which fails. This means a super effective Giga Drain hits, doing about half of Samurott's HP. Aqua Tail connects, doing massive damage before Giga Drain KOs Samurott. The Aqua Tail seriously did a ton of damage, and had the first one connected, I would have switched to Lennon, set up a few curses, and then KO'd with a Crunch. Third out is Lileep, so I switched to Cobain, who is now back on the team. Lileep just goes for a Taunt, however, which isn't too big of a deal. After taking a weak Night Slash, X's hits and gets the clean KO. Last out is the Fire Monkey, so I switch into Lennon as Semiseer goes for a Leer. Cheren, why is Leer on your pre-Elite 4 team anyway? It's not like Cheren really had any chance in the Elite 4 and just goes for another Leer before Surf gets the one-shot, winning me the battle and closing out the rival fights of Black and White. With that, I'm at the Pokemon League where 6 trainers await me. The Elite 4 is going to be rough, but luckily I have a plan. Here's my final team leveled up to the cap of 52. Keep in mind, once I enter the Elite 4, the caps are completely lifted. I ultimately decide to bring Lennon, the Boss, Axel, Elvis, Cobain, and Cradily, as they give me the perfect amount of bulk and speed. Ultimately, Growl and Cash are going to be riding the benches as Sudowoodo is completely outclassed and Cash can't evolve into Tyranitar. Plus, the Dark type wouldn't have been that useful in the Elite Four anyway. With all that out of the way, let's do this. First in the Elite Four is Caitlyn, by far the easiest member. She leads off with Reuniclus and I with Growl. I outspeed to set up a Shell Smash, lowering my defenses, meaning the incoming Psychic does a ton of damage. A Hyrule would have probably KO'd Cobain. Luckily, the Shell Smash and living the Psychic wins me the entire fight. From here, X-Scissor rips through her entire team. Thanks to the speed boost, I don't even worry about being outsped. For the Sigilyph, however, I did use Rock Slide because Bug is neutral against it. Other than that, it was a pretty easy battle. Second in the Elite Four is Grimsley, the Dark type trainer who can hit all of my Pokemon for super effective damage. Fortunately, all of his Pokemon are super easy to set up on. He leads off with the Fighting type Scrafty and I with our friendly neighborhood Cobain. Scrafty goes for a Sand attack on turn number 1 as I go for a Substitute, which costs me some of my HP. Scrafty goes for a Sand attack on the following turn, which fails, allowing me to get a free Shell Smash. I outspeed and go for a second Shell Smash, raising my attack to +4 as Scrafty once again whiffs a Sand attack. From here, X-Scissor KOs the Scrafty, which brings out Grimsley's second Pokemon, Crocodile. His Intimidate ability actually fails thanks to the Substitute, which I didn't know before. It's not like it matters because Crocodile outspeeds and gets destroyed by an X-Scissor. Threw it out his Bisharp, and even with its Steel type making him neutral to Bug, an X-Scissor still gets the one-shot. Last from Grimsley is his Liepard, who obviously falls to a single X-Scissor, winning me the battle. Even with Sand attack, Grimsley stood no chance. Third in the Elite Four is Chantelle and her Ghost types. She leads off with Cofagrigus and I with Lennon for a change. Lennon outspeeds and goes for a Substitute as Cofagrigus fails a Will-O-Wisp. I go for a Shell Smash, a Shadow Ball hits and breaks my sub. It Crunch does massive damage, but to my horror, Cofagrigus lives, allowing a Shadow Ball to leave me deep in the red. Luckily, I know Chantelle is going to heal up, so I take the opportunity to go for another Smash. On the following turn, I get the KO with a single Crunch. Second out is Jellicent, who is destroyed by a Crunch. Curse Body doesn't activate, although if it did, it would have been a pretty big deal. Third out is Golurk, who falls to a Crunch, leaving Chantelle's final Pokemon, Chandelure. Like his comrades before him, Chandelure falls to a Crunch, although it does activate Flame Body. I was pretty scared here until I realized that burn damage doesn't activate when the fight ends. If that was the case, the run would have been over, so thank you Game Freak. Last in the Elite Four is Marshall, the Fighting type trainer, who's going to be a huge issue. In order to pull this off, we're going to need a bit of luck. Marshall leads off with Throw and I with Cradilly. After taking a hard Stone Edge, I go for a Flash, lowering Throw's accuracy. I know, petty right? From here, I switch into Cobain and I Storm Throw for a bit of damage. I then go for a Substitute, and thanks to the Flash, Stone Edge misses. I then proceed to Shell Smash, raising my attack, before Throw goes for a Bulldoze, which I also avoid. Nice. I then go for another Smash before Bulldoze connects, which breaks my Substitute. I then set up another Substitute as Throw luckily misses the second Stone Edge. From here, I set up the Sand as my game lags for some reason. I'm not sure why. Fortunately, I can then take Throw out with an Aerial Ace, bringing in Sawk. Sawk does have the Sturdy ability and is the reason why I set up the Sand in the first place. Thanks to Sturdy being broken, Aerial Ace and Sandstorm Chip get the KO. We even avoid Stone Edge, which wasn't necessary, but I'll take it. Third out is Conkeldurr, who is fairly bulky but goes down to a single Aerial Ace, leaving the final Pokemon in the Elite Four, Mienshao. Normally this thing is super speedy, but he just goes down to an Aerial Ace, winning me the battle and the Elite Four Gauntlet. With that, we can go ahead and face the champion Alder. However, in a shocking twist of events, N beat him before I could get there, making him the new champion of Unova. Unfortunately, I don't even get a chance to face N because the 7 Sages want to fight me. Fortunately, the gym leaders come in and hold off the Sages, allowing me to fight N. Before I can do that, however, I have to catch the legendary Pokemon Reshiram. I can't escape or anything either because the game makes me throw my Master Ball at it and catch it. Now, I theory crafted for about an hour, and the only solution I could think of was to use all 14 of the rare candies found in Unova and give them all to Cobain. Reminded that the level cap ends when the Elite Four starts, since there's no new level cap. I literally did not see any way to beat N. Before you get mad at me, plenty of YouTubers like Silspectre do this, and many hardcore Nuzlocke videos do this. I promise this won't be a habit and just a one-time thing. There was literally no other way. N leads off with the legendary Pokemon Zekrom, and I with Cobain. I tank a hard Fusion Bolt for massive damage as I set up a Substitute. Since Zekrom doesn't see the KO, they go for a light screen as I go for a shell smash, and then I can then outspeed on the following turn and go underground for a dig. I then re-emerge and get the clean KO, which brings out Carracosta. A dig does massive damage before Carracosta connects with a Stone Edge, breaking my substitute. Since N heals up, I take the opportunity to set up another shell smash, which is a huge mistake on my end. Carracosta goes for a Stone Edge, but thankfully he misses, allowing me to go underground for another dig. Had Stone Edge connected, that would have been the end of the run, so that's a relief. Third out is Archeops, who lives in X Scissor and misses Stone Edge. What is it with my luck? Fourth is Vanillix, who obviously falls to an X Scissor because of how weak it is. Fifth is Clink Clang, whose Steel type isn't doing it any favors and is destroyed by a super effective dig. Last from N is Zoroark, who falls to a super effective X Scissor, winning me the battle. But we're not out of the woods yet, as Getsus wants to fight me. He leads off with Cofagrigus, who loves going for Toxic on the first turn. I use this to my advantage and I set up a substitute as he predictably whiffs a Toxic. In fact, he loves doing this so much I can set up 3 shell smashes as Getsus keeps going for Toxic. Thanks to Getsus' incompetence, I can go for X Scissor, which actually doesn't KO. I forgot Ghost resisted bug moves, but fortunately on the following turn, X Scissor picks up the KO. Second is Bisharp, who falls to a dig. Third is Sispitoad, who falls to a neutral X Scissor. Fourth is Hydreigon, who gets destroyed by an X Scissor. That's for Fish. Fifth is Bouffalant, who is one-shot by X Scissor. That's for Quacken. Last from Getsus is an Electros, who is murdered by an X Scissor, winning me the battle and the entire run. I'm honestly not sure how to feel. While this run was fun and involved some creative strategy, it fell apart towards the end. Given that I significantly over-leveled my Pokemon for the last 2 fights, the victory does not feel right. While I technically did abide by Hardcore Nuzlocke rules, it still just does not sit right. The over-leveling strategy is not something I want to use often, plus using setup moves like Shell Smash was completely broken. Substitute in general is also pretty broken as it messes with the AI to the point where it seems unfair. This playthrough was pretty fun, excluding the end however. These were a great group of Pokemon and I really look forward to using them in the future. Black and White are still my favorite games in these series, and using non-Gen 5 Pokemon like Cradily really added to the experience. I have a lot more content planned this year, which is exciting. Thank you so much for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.